The Christmas secret that changed everything. It was Christmas Eve. Streets were glowing with fairy lights, children were laughing in the snow, and every home was filled with warmth. But not every door hid joy that night. Behind one lonely window, a boy named Daniel sat quietly, his eyes fixed on the road outside. He was waiting for his father. Every Christmas, his father promised to be home before dinner. But the clock's hands moved slowly, and the chair at the table remained empty. Daniel's mother tried to distract him with cookies and carols, but his ears were tuned only to the silence outside. Then something unusual caught his attention. Through the frost-covered glass, Daniel noticed a trail of footprints pressed into the snow. They were deep, uneven, and led into the woods behind their home. He stared hard. There were no footprints returning, only ones going in. A strange pull stirred in his chest. Almost without thinking, Daniel slipped on his boots, wrapped himself in a blanket and stepped outside. The cold bit into his cheeks, the world silent except for the crunch of snow beneath his feet. The deeper he walked, the darker the woods became. The joyful sounds of the town faded, replaced by an eerie stillness as though the forest itself was watching. The footprints guided him until he saw something impossible, a faint glow between the trees. There stood a cabin. Daniel froze. He had explored these woods many times and he knew for certain. This cabin had never been here before. Yet there it was with light flickering through its windows. Smoke should have risen from the chimney but none did. Curiosity was stronger than fear. He pushed the door open. Inside, a fire burned steadily, casting long shadows across the wooden walls. On a table sat a book, thick, ancient, with gold patterns that shimmered as though alive. Daniel's breath hitched. He reached out, and the instant his fingers touched the cover, the pages burst open on their own. The book revealed scenes of his family. His father as a little boy, laughing with his grandparents. His mother, younger, walking through a market long before they had met. Page after page showed memories no child should have known. And then, the final page. Daniel saw himself. Sitting in that very cabin. Holding the book. But behind him stood a tall, cloaked figure, faceless, leaning close as though whispering into his ear. The fire suddenly dimmed. The cabin groaned. The air grew heavy, pressing against his chest. From the darkest corner, a shape began to move. Slowly, deliberately. The shadow from the page. It had no eyes, no mouth, yet Daniel felt it watching him, felt it speaking directly into his bones. You should not have come here. His knees trembled. He clutched the book tighter. The shadow stretched out a long hand, and the cabin shook as though it might tear itself apart. The windows rattled, the fire hissed, and the floorboards creaked under invisible weight. Daniel wanted to scream, but no sound left his throat. Then, a voice cut through the storm inside the cabin. Daniel? It was his father. Bursting through the trees, snow clinging to his coat, his father pulled him outside. Daniel gasped for air as the freezing wind hit him, but he dared to look back. The cabin was gone. Behind them, there was only untouched snow, smooth and silent as though no building had ever stood there. The book, too, had vanished from Daniel's hands. His father gripped his shoulders, his face pale but firm. Some doors aren't meant to be opened, he whispered. Daniel wanted to ask how his father knew, but the words caught in his throat. There was fear in his father's eyes, not the kind of fear from getting lost in the woods, but the fear of someone who had seen that cabin before. They returned home. The chair at the table was no longer empty. His father sat beside him, but he was unusually quiet that night, his eyes often drifting to the window to the darkness beyond. For the rest of the evening, laughter filled the house, but Daniel couldn't shake the memory. The faceless figure. The warning. The way the cabin had simply disappeared as though waiting for another time, or another visitor. And when Daniel went to bed, he thought he heard something outside his window, the crunch of footsteps in the snow. He pulled the blanket over his head and told himself it was just the wind. But deep down he knew, the cabin was still out there, hidden, waiting for the next curious soul to follow its trail. And maybe, just maybe, that soul could be you.